very special good evening to you and welcome to Mr. Chairman. And as usual, we say good evening to wherever you are in St. Lucia, from Groselay in the north to Vieux in the south. Those of you on the eastern coastline, our friends in Denry and Mopo and where else? Miku. Those of you on the western coastline, our friends in Millet and Marigot and Jacmel and Roseau, not forgetting Anselray, Canaries, Soufrière, Bouton, our friends in Choiseul, Labrie, a very special good evening. And of course our friends in the diaspora in the United States of America, Canada, Great Britain, and all our colleagues and friends in the Caribbean, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. Welcome to our program tonight. On this week's Mr. Chairman, we discuss the important role of the Archeological and Historical Society and the short, medium, and long-term plans of its newly installed executive. We also discuss some of the controversial issues being debated in the country these days, the Dolphin Park, the DSH project in the south, and the manner in which environmental and conservation groups, as well as the approach of the government and the opposition towards the proposed developments. Our guests, Mr. Francis Pappin, First Vice President, and Archeological Secretary, Mr. Laurent Jomo Jean-Pierre of the Archeological and Historical Society. All this and more, plus your calls, of course. So it's Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for attending yet another meeting. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Just very nice to have you guys here. We've discussed this ad nauseum when we meet from time to time, and I'm very flattered that you would take time from your busy schedule to be here this evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dave, for inviting us here this evening to discuss our plans for really bringing the Archaeological and Historical Society forward, and also to have some discussions on the hot topics of the day.
Hot button issues.
Hot button issues. Hot potato issues.
Cassava issues.
The DSH project, the Dolphin, and so on. So I'm very happy to be here this evening.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for the invite. It's my good pleasure to be here this evening. As usual, I'm delighted to be here to discuss national issues. It's part of my business. People used to tell me, mind your business. And this is my business. It's national business, and I'm happy to be part of the dialogue.
Before I ask you some questions about the Archaeological and Historical Society, one of the things that people have said, perception that such entities like the Archaeological and Historical Society, as well as the St. Lucia National Trust, have always been looked upon as elitist groups, rightly or wrongly, but that's the perception. And then we have the radicals like you fellas, and I guess the average viewer is saying, hey, these fellas are radical fellas, what these fellas doing as part of this entity? What would be your response to that?
Well, radical. Well, I understand the word radical to mean to approach things from their root causes. And I like to approach things from their root causes. So if radical is taken in that sense,
you're okay with it?
I'm okay with it, because I believe if we are to get true solutions to problems, that's where we need to start looking and acting. But the perception that you spoke about concerning these organizations, I hear a lot of that around the place. And when I became a member of the Archeological and Historical Society, and prior to becoming a member in 2015,
As recent as that.
yes, as recent as that, I had no idea, no knowledge of the existence of the Archeological and Historical Society. And Jomo was the one who actually told me about the society. He had been a member for a very long time, and he actually brought me into it. And even before I became a member of the society, he invited me to an AGM of the St. Lucia National Trust. And I met him in town one day, and he just grabbed me and said, "Look, come on, let's go and join the society." And on our way to the society to actually apply for membership, we met a friend who's sadly, passed away. His name was Wendell Phillips. He was a land surveyor, a very good friend of ours. And when we got near the building which houses the office of the ANH, he asked me, "Where were you two guys going?" I said, "I'm going to join the ANH." And he just held my hand and we went. And that day, Wendell and I became members of the society. But I have been asking within the society, why is it that I only found out about such an important organization in 2015? And I spent the greater part of my life in Castries working and going to school, although I never lived in Castries. I was a primary school teacher at the RC Boys Primary School, which I find to be a very important reason for me to have known of the Archeological and Historical Society, and so on. But in any event, going back to the point as to why two radical fellas would be joining. For my part, in my doctoral studies, I specialize in sustainable development. And so the work that the St. Lucia National Trust does, which is preservation, protection, conservation, enhancement of our biocultural heritage, is at the heart of sustainable development. What the Archeological and Historical Society does, which is primarily protection, preservation, conservation, etc., of our archaeological and historical assets of this country. That is also a very critical aspect of sustainable development. And so I figured that I should really become part of those organizations so that I can help contribute to the sustainable development of this country.
And because you hold such a key position in the Archaeological and Historical Society, that gives you a pathway to be a member of the trust, right? You are on its board, the St. Lucia National Trust.
Yes.
By virtue of the fact of your position in the ANH?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
If you are a member of the executive committee of
Right.
the ANH,
Right.
Actually, there are two members of the executive of the ANH are required to represent the ANH on the Council of the St. Lucia National Trust.
Okay.
And so I am one of those two persons. In fact, I served in that capacity on the Trust Council as an alternate in the first instance from June or July in 2015. And after our recently held annual general meeting, Mr. Laurent Pierre and myself, we were renominated, reselected to continue serving in those capacities.
Radicalism and Archaeological and Historical Society. I know he said that you've been a member for a considerable
Well, I have a
length of time.
Yeah, I think it's a calling, Dave, and I have a restless curiosity. I'm an inquisitive soul. As a child, I attended the RC Boys Primary School, and I remember clearly, it's tattooed in my memory, where they took us as boys above the ice factory at the time where Diboulet is there, and there was a modicum of a museum, and I saw artifacts. I saw Amerindian stone axes like this. I saw skulls. It was a kind of a museum, a small museum, and that has sort of been etched in my memory. And in my academic studies, I chose the study of anthropology and botany, and in anthropology you must take modules of archaeology, and I'm very privileged to have traveled all through Latin America. I did biblical anthropology throughout the Middle East, Jordan, Israel, and I've traveled to Bhutan and all of this place doing research. So it's in my blood. And I worked at the National Trust for 10 years, a decade, as the research officer and herbarium curator. Herbarium is where you study the plants of St. Lucia and their uses, the medicinal uses, etc., etc. And obviously the Trust and the Historical Society are mother and daughter. So I interacted with the folk research, the FRC, the Archaeological and Historical Society. So a lot of these elders of these institutions, they groomed me, as it were. They are working my consciousness in things St. Lucians and things that's really part of, as my colleague says, biocultural heritage. And so it's part of my DNA, really. And that is why I go about recruiting, and I think it's a calling. I can't help myself. And I have a wanderlust too. So I love to go out in the wild and collect plants and research. Research is in my blood, and that's part of what I do in this organization, is to do research in the natural and cultural heritage of this country.
You mentioned assets that you saw somewhere at Duboulet's, right?
Yes, upstairs.
What would you say, are there any, if I were to ask you where and what are some of the assets of the Archaeological and Historical Society, what would the response be to that?
Yeah, the Archaeological and Historical Society have a number of assets, from gold coins to special medallions.
Are they on display as we speak?
No, they are housed, some of that is housed in a bank. It's on the lock and key at a bank for safety.
I see.
And some of it is housed, especially the material culture. And when I speak of material culture, I speak of stone axes, I speak of shells and other, other cannonballs and bayonets and stuff like that at the bottom of or at Vigi rather, in one of the buildings down there. It used to be very air-conditioned and properly taken care of, but in this dispensation, work needs to be done on these artifacts.
So if I were to ask you both to outline some of the achievements of that society, that's the Archaeological and Historical Society, what would some of them be?
I think one of the major achievements of the Archaeological and Historical Society, which was founded in 1954, so it's over 60 years now, was to give birth to the whole conservation movement, both archaeological and biocultural. In terms of, National Trust is a daughter of the Archaeological Society. So is the archives, indirectly, and so is FRC indirectly, because it was the Archaeological Society that raised the consciousness. So that's a major achievement, and that's how places like the National Trust was birthed. And in terms of publication, the first set of publications, which I have a few of them here, by deceased Easter and Father Jess, about ourselves, about the original people, the Amerindians, that came out of the bosom and research of the Archaeological and Historical Society. And of course the collection of artifacts, People did not put a value on artifacts and the importance of it into, like Derek Olcott said, to reassemble the fragments of the broken vase, that history that's broken, that's shattered, and to they began the reassembling. On the people like Father Jess, you had people like Derek Walcott's mentor, what's his name now? Simmons, Harry Simmons, and the pioneers. And that is why tonight I want to pay tribute to the pioneers, the people who went before us. Because if we are standing tall today in any way, it's because we, like the African proverb says, we stand at the back of our ancestors. And I want to pay tribute to the many, and permit me to do that tonight, Mr. Samuel, to the pioneers of that movement. And I really want to do that to people like Harry Simmons, Father Jess, the FMI priests. And by the way, a lot of that started with the church. You know, the church has played a very important role in the conservation and preservation of our culture. They were of course the erudite, the intellectuals, and they helped in that regard. You had people like Easter, deceased Easter, who lived on Pave. You know, he had something called the outline of St. Lucia's history. So these guys begin publishing and give us something tangible, something to read about ourselves, because we didn't know anything. We had an oral history, but they put our history on paper. That's a major achievement. St. Lucia French Revolution was another one written by Easter in 1965. Robert Deveau, St. Lucian historian, who published even this last book. The last book was he was one of the authors himself, Jolie in the South, and Mr. Guy Ellis. So this guy began a movement of awakening our consciousness of who we are and begin researching ourselves, which is very important. And I want to go, Mr. Eric Branford, you know, was one of the pioneers. Mr. Wilvin King. Mr. Branford came a little later, by the way, but I'm speaking about the guys who began it. He was part of it. He was there from 1960s, so he could be considered part of the beginning of the movement. People like Sir Julian Hunt. I want to pay tribute to this fellow. This is St. Clair Daniel himself, one of the pioneers. Gregor Williams, who came after, but our local historian who is still alive. People, past presidents, even Pat Charles contributed to that body of knowledge we call our history. People like Rosemary Maffrey, who was a past president, Fortuna Anthony, a past president, Jennifer Hunt, Lady Compton, and of course the historian Brin played an important part. He wrote about our history. We may disagree with him, and that's okay. He called the Creole language a language of toothless old women, and we, gibberish of toothless old women, and we criticize him about that, and it's rightly so. These guys began the foundation, and though sometimes they need to, how must I put it, they constantly need to be warned and reproved, but they build the foundation for us to build upon. You had people like the deceased, not the deceased, but the former, the president before this new administration, Mr. Martin Satney. You had people like Dr. Frederick, Dr. Louis, and many others who have made contribution to this society. And I just want to hail them tonight and thank them that they've given us a society, as I said, they're constantly to be warned and reproved and rearranged and discussed, because we don't worship what is known. We have to challenge it and push the boundaries, and because nobody has all the answers and know everything. So it's a constant rearranging, as it were. Nonetheless, they made a very good contribution that we have a society today which has given birth to many other organizations.
And I think they need to be commended for the contribution that they have all made. I made a comment a while ago, and I noticed you sidetracked it. And the comment was that there is a perception, the perception out there is that organizations like the National Trust, the Archeological and Historical Society, the Folk Research Center, are made up of so-called elitist people. And you didn't respond to that. You just basically, you dwelt on the radicalism, the radical comment that came afterwards. But do you think that's a fair comment to make? Or do you think people are
It's a
just do
perception.
not understand?
It's a perception,
Yeah.
and people don't place a lot of value on stone
Yeah.
or snakes
So-
and migraine.
So what say you? Is that an unjustified comment when you hear something like that being made or being said, that these groups are elitist?
I think there may be a grain of truth to it, to some extent. As to precisely what extent, I cannot say. But what I do know is those organizations need to do, they've done a lot, but I think they could have done much better, and they certainly need to do much better to get rid of that perception.
Good.
And
Good.
in order to do that, they need to root themselves in the various communities throughout St. Lucia.
It's interesting you say that, but one of the things that came very strongly at me is when you said that imagine you were a teacher at the RC Boys School and you had not heard of the Archeological and Historical Society. So clearly that's been a problem of getting the information out about that society, that entity. So as the new kids on the block, as it were, what are you both going to do to ensure that what he went through does not happen, and that St. Lucians understand what the A&H is all about? And you mentioned about community, ensure that the Archaeological and Historical Society wends its way into the local communities, the communities all over this land.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, the Archaeological and Historical Society have done a lot, but again, it's perception, and it depends on where you place your value. Some people wouldn't place their value on a Jack Spanier or a piece of rock. They think I'm mad to be walking all over the place looking for rocks and trying to look at. So that sometimes it's your value system. Having said that, I agree with my colleague here. That perception is there. It's the intellectuals, people that I went to a place in Dibara not too long ago, and a Rasta man said to me, "Boy, all of you old fellas who went to university like a lot of old things." you see where he came recently. I'm in the community working and asking about the history and things. He said, "You all fellas who have gone to school, why you all like old things like that?" And he says, they had a big doctor that came from Vienna. And he says, "Oh, this man is a big doctor at a university in Vienna. And he come here, his old things he want to study and look about. Why you all interested in old? I don't like old things." And he told me, "He's a Rasta man." You know, so again, it's where your values are. But having said that, what we are trying to do now in this present dispensation is to decentralize the Archaeological and Historical Society. In terms of right now, our new executive, our president is from Labrie, and we have brought in a number of young people from all over the place, from all walks of life, so that we could spread out. And the part of the midterm and long-term plan is to have small archaeological societies, baby archaeological societies in these villages, in the schools. So when you talk about a Gua Magazin, we have somebody in that region that knows everything about Gua Magazin, that knows everything about Saltibus, that knows everything about Debara, about Dauphin. And we don't have to be there in person, but we have these cells so that people know about their immediate environment. They are the masters of it anyway.
Would you say, though, that there is interest out there in the community?
I think so. I think so. If you make people proud of themselves and they see value for what they have and they don't break coconut on a petroglyph.
You mentioned if people feel a certain degree of pride in themselves, is it something that is fairly recognizable in St. Lucia as we speak? Would you say that St. Lucians are generally proud of themselves?
I think it's innate, but you have to
It's
fun
innate.
it. It's innate, but you have to fun it. like anything else, you've got to fund certain things because given our historical background and so forth and coming out of this 7 times
Brokenness.
British, 7 times French, one time you're British, one time you're French. So we are a disjointed kind of society. And because of that we have issues. We're growing out of that a little. But I think it's innate that people love that they are St. Lucians. They tell you our sweet St. Lucia. More so when you live in the diaspora and you remember back home.
It's interesting you mention that because that's a very interesting comment. I've often found, and I've said this in other places, I've often found when I go to the diaspora, the St. Lucianism that
blossoms.
Oh
it
my
blossoms.
God! It's romantic. It's just unbelievable the way you are embraced and you're made to feel so good when you're in New York or Toronto or Montreal or London, England, you name it, and you get this almost magical quality about
being St. Lucian.
Being St. Lucian.
And you're homesick.
And then it's all too short. It's all too brief.
Yeah.
And you come back home
Yes.
where you should feel that very same way. And Ipala is not there.
That's why it is said that sometimes you appreciate best what you have
When you're outside.
by being outside, looking at it.
Yes, yeah. No, I have actually wept when I'm in New York, just being homesick. I miss my childhood friends. I miss the terrain that I know best. The VG Beach and the river baths. You know, these are the things that make me St. Lucian. The hey in my language. In the streets, you know, like I heard somebody say recently, I was in church and he talked about Pamem mwete lastelma, pamem dlo pile mwete sabwe. I mean, that is profound. You know, and you know, these are the things you miss when you're abroad, and this is to be what makes us St. Lucians. So I think it's innate, but sometimes when you're here, you take things for granted. That's the thing. It's like some fellas have their mother there and they don't care. Say, "Lay more, you carry body, mama, more."
So let's focus on the Archeological and Historical Society. Give us some information. Give us a sense as to some of what your plans are. You are a new executive. There are obviously innumerable challenges. Give our viewers some indication.
Very much so. But before I go into the plans, let me just just let the people know who the members of the new executive are.
Of course.
Right. The president is Mr. Citus Clinton Hunt. Francis Pappin, I'm the first vice president. Henix Joseph is the second vice president. Carlin Wells from Viewfort is the secretary.
And by the way, Henix is from Bassin Joseph.
Henix is from Lakwamengo.
From Lakwamengo,
From
yes,
Lakwamengo.
yes.
And I am from Bassin Joseph. Yuselta Sitolin Albert, she's the assistant secretary. And she originates in
Ravin Poisson.
Poisson. And we have Patrick Freeman is the historical secretary.
He's from down south, Monrepo, or somewhere between Monrepo and Dennery. Yeah. But he's from the southern suburb.
And he also works at the National Archives.
Yes.
And we have Laurent Jean-Pierre is the archaeological secretary. Peter Lewis is the public relations officer.
He's originally from Grass Street.
Okay. Donald Anthony is a trustee.
A Mondidon boy.
Mondidon boy, yes. We have Rock Jean is a trustee. And I think Rock originates in Castries.
Yes,
I'm not
in
too
the
sure.
Castries Basin.
In the Castries Basin somewhere, I think. We have Dr. Nicholas Frederick, who is from Miku Monrepo area.
Former minister or legal affairs,
he was former attorney general.
Okay.
And I think he was the
education minister at one time.
Not minister, from what I recall.
Anyway,
I think he was
the permanent secretary.
Permanent secretary.
Yes.
In the Ministry of Education at some time.
Yes. And we have Marvin Anthony, who is a floor member. young person. We have Jalim Yudovic, who is another floor member.
Okay.
And these are young,
and we have
I know John.
Dade Hutchinson is another floor member. He's young. So what we have in this executive here, we have a very good mixture of young people, people like Jomo and myself in our age group, people slightly younger, people way younger, people in their 20s. You have people in their 30s, people in their 40s, their 50s, and you have the more experienced, the more seasoned persons like our president, Citus Hunt,
from Labrie, by
right,
the way, yeah.
and Dr. Frederick, Nicholas Frederick, very seasoned, very experienced person. On the executive, we have two ladies.
Yes, yes.
We have two ladies.
Yes.
Unfortunately, but when it comes to electing people to position, it can be, you know, a tricky thing, in the sense that who you get at the time are people who are willing and able. Not that there isn't there we do not have more women who are out there, but at the particular time, they were the ones who
came forward.
And showed their willingness.
We would have preferred more gender balance and
right.
more women in the, and young women at that, you know. But what we try to do is women, youth, institutional memory, people who are a little more seasoned. And I must say, people like Mr. Gregor Williams is still and his wife are very active in the, the association. Yes. Critical, but good.
Of course.
And we need that, you know.
And although Dr. Williams, Gregor, although he's not on the executive, but he is of tremendous value in that whenever you call him, yes, he's an historian. Whenever you call him for service,
he's available.
He is there.
Yeah. He loves it.
He loves it, and he loves to. It's his life, and he loves to pass on whatever information, whatever knowledge he has, on to you know, to those who are up and coming.
I remember when I was at Cunard Talk Hotel some years ago as its PR entertainment director. I recall having some sort of a contract with Winnie King. And he would come, because every week we would have some new arrivals, particularly from England. And one of the things that we tried to do was to inform the new arrivals about St. Lucia. And Winnie was always available. And after my welcome to the guests, and sometimes they numbered about 100 or so people in a room, Winnie would then give some historical
orientation.
It was really, really beautiful. Yes. And while you were talking, I was actually seeing him, and imagine that I was listening to him speak. And I'm wondering whether that this might not be one of the things that the Archeological and Historical Society would like to revisit.
Continue. But that's very important, because when Winnie King retired somewhat and Mr. Gregor Williams had sort of cooled out, I took on that role. I would go to the hotels with a mobile museum, as it were, in a basket, with all the artifacts, lay it on the table in that same hotel, and give a lecture at that hotel. So that became my job when I was at the National Trust, before I left to go studies. But among the other things, which is important, we've, apart from just a lot of research done by the Archaeological Society, they've done digs at Casabah with international institutions like University of Vienna in the south, in Pointe de Caille.
How is that organized? How
well,
I mean, take us through. This is fascinating stuff. Yes. When you do something like that, clearly a lot of research has to be made, and so these people are contacted and give us the behind-the-scenes maneuvering.
It's an institutional collaboration, institution-to-institution collaboration. Research is part of universities around the world, and they look for avenues to send their students to experience things in the field. And if you have a field of work, a field that needs to be worked and you haven't got the expertise, so you have a collaboration with these universities. They send the expertise, and then you work with the local institution on sites that are deemed important for research. So that's how a lot of these things were done, and I can name 2 universities that we worked with. The University of Vienna, who did the digs primarily at Pointe de Caille, which is a very important part of the whole Amerindian civilization, the Tumase civilization, which is a special kind of civilization. They say it's unique to St. Lucia, it's older than the Caribs, and so forth. And then we've done a lot of baseline data. We've data the university with, from the Netherlands.
University of Leiden.
Of Leiden. In Casaba, where we found that's what they've posited.
In Casaba?
In Casaba, right in Casaba and to the north of the beach there, we found an important burial site, which is one of the best preserved Amerindian burial site in the entire Eastern Caribbean. So things are happening. We have a very rich culture here, and we found a lot of collection of artifacts. The petroglyphs, we've documented the petroglyphs. Petroglyphs are Amerindian writings on stones or drawings on stones. Had these guys not done that kind of work, we probably would have been breaking it to build houses or to cook food or something, So we are happy for the work that the Archaeological Society and the pioneers did. I cannot but stress that. Yeah.
But we went into talking about how those digs are done and so on. But that, Dave, takes us right into one of the things that we have planned to do to really get the society where it really is supposed to be, and that is by way of intensifying and broadening our networking, the establishment of ties with organizations, and locally, of course, regionally, and internationally, and
restoring some of the ties that we had before.
Restoring some of the ties. Wonderful. And those organizations include, of course, as Jomo pointed out, academic institutions, and some of them are non-academic institutions. For example, a non-academic institution would be, say, UNESCO, for example. And there are various other organizations like that out there.
In fact, we are already in conversation with folks, archaeologists in Martinique, who have done tremendous work. They're even publishing and saving a lot of the artifacts that are under threat, both through natural causes and human causes. And that's a crucial thing. There's something called endangered archaeological sites and endangered artifacts. And we need to rescue some of these things very quickly, or we may lose them forever. The seas taking them away.
You mentioned a couple of sites, but are there, as we speak, say in the Castries Basin, are there any archaeological sites worthy of mention?
Yes. There's one at Mondidon. There's an archaeological site at the top of Mondidon. And most people don't know that archaeological site. You have places like even Vigi, around Vigi. These are archaeological sites. A lot of these sites are understudied. Shock is an archaeological strong. I've gone and found pottery, Amerindian pottery, still lying on the surface, because I don't dig. That has to be supervised by an expert. But I do surface archaeology, and all of that whole coastline. All archaeological sites waiting for work to be done. Many times I walk around the cemetery in shock and keep looking.
What about Vieux Fort?
Oh well, Vieux Fort is rich. Vieux Fort is rich. Black Bay there is for archaeology. It's a gold mine. I still pick up artifacts on the beach in Black Bay. and nice, beautiful we had an exhibition 2 years ago. A lot of the artifacts we displayed came from that site. And all over the country, we still have a lot of work to be done. So we're in conversation with people from Martinique who would be coming here to work with us. We are trying to organize a regional archaeological organization. It's there already, but we need to revive it and become part of it with funding from the French and so forth. So there's a lot of work that we are beginning to sink our teeth in and to collaborate with people in the region, in Guadeloupe, in Cayenne, and so forth and so forth.
But I just want to add, while we're on the whole subject of...
Before our first break, quickly.
Oh, sure. In broadening and intensifying our ties with those organizations, one of the things we want to come out of it, and it is an important part of our plan, is to make sure that we get some training for our people. We need to train people in the various areas: archaeology, heritage site management, history, and so on.
Museology.
Yes. So as we liaise with people to bring them here to do research, we want to work so that they can offer us scholarships of various periods in the various disciplines, so that we can get our people trained, so that they can come back here and help with research, protection, management of our artifacts, our sites.
And lead out our institutions.
Research is very vital.
Absolutely.
It's key.
It is the heart of what we do. Our raison d'être.
Would you say that the average St. Lucian has a really full appreciation of the work that the Archaeological and Historical Society does?
I would think not. I think mostly people who have traveled and who have gone to the schools of higher learning would have that appreciation. But that is our role, to make people appreciate the history, what's important to us, what is ours. What we have helped shape. Like the great anthropologist says that man is born in a web of significance that he himself has spun. So we're part of what's happening as it shapes us.
Okay, let's take our first break. You are viewing Mr. Chairman. I'm David Samuels, and I have two members of the Archaeological and Historical Society here with us this evening. Stay tuned, we'll be right back, and we'll get into some very controversial matters, so don't you go away.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the official opening of the Calypso Season 2017. TOT Soca Village in collaboration with CMC present Kaiso Legacy Grand Opening Night, Wednesday, May 31st at the NCC, 8 p.m. on time. A total package promised: young, new, seasoned performers, all genres of Calypso, Kaiso, Groovy, Soca. Kaiso Legacy, heavy hitters on stage: Invader, Morgie, Black Pearl, Lil Nick, Achiever, Weatherman, Her Black, Wally, and more. Kaiso Legacy, TOT Soca Village Grand Opening Night, Wednesday, May 31st at the NCC. Admission $20. A season of surprises. Kaiso Legacy. Kaiso.
Taste the real Ruta, enjoy the real Ruta, refreshing juice of every day. Whoa, Ruta.
The Ministry of Health will be undertaking an island-wide survey from April 24th to verify and document St. Lucia's success in eliminating schistosomiasis, otherwise known as bilharzia, a chronic disease caused by parasitic worms which live in certain freshwater snails. This survey targets primary school students within the age group of 8 to 11 years. It is very simple. The survey will obtain a urine sample from students, a few drops of blood through a finger prick, and administering a short questionnaire. All tests will be undertaken by a trained team from the Ministry of Health under the supervision of a registered nurse. Now remember, this is only a survey. St. Lucia currently has no issues with schistosomiasis or bilharzia. However, we need the support of communities, teachers, parents, and their students. Partner with the Ministry of Health and support the survey from April 24th and help protect the health of this generation and future generations. A message brought to you by the Ministry of Health in partnership with the Ministry of Education and the Pan American Health Organization.
Hello there, welcome back. I'm David Samuels, and I'm here with Mr. Francis Pappin, the first Vice President of the St. Lucia Archeological and Historical Society, and the Society's Archeological Secretary, Mr. Laurent Jomo Jean-Pierre, who is obviously very, very well known. Not that Mr. Pappin isn't equally well known, but that's for another show. You wanted to zero in on some recent finds in the Castries Harbor.
Yes. Something amazing happened this week, and I think that's all part of the work the Archeological Society and the National Trust and the Folk Research have been doing, that have awakened a certain amount of number of conscious persons in the society, that they found before people would find things and just throw them away. But this week and last week, we got calls from Slasper, and I want to big up Slasper tonight. And they got a cannon in the old Prince Alfred Basin, what we knew, where we had the Greasy Pole and the 14th December celebration in that general area. And they called us immediately to come and take a look at it, and have decided to hand it over to the Society for Protection. Also this week, they found a propeller, huge propeller. It is believed that it was either the propeller of the Untata that was bombed in the harbor,
I heard some people talking about it.
Or Lady Nelson. Oh. Now the investigation and research
no one
happen.
sure.
Well, people are positing that it is so, but we don't
what
do
is
things
so?
That
it belongs to the Untata,
yes,
or the other.
Yes.
Or
and some people
sure.
some people say it's Lady Nelson because they one.
So it's still speculated.
Yes, but one gentleman say he know because one of the boats was taken out, so he know that one was taken out. I think the Lady Nelson, so it is the Untata. So we have to iron that out, and that comes with research again. That's why you need money for research. That's part of our subvention to do research. So I thought to highlight that and to thank the Slasper for being so conscious of the heritage and the importance of these finds, and to contact us and to hand it over to us. And we're going to meet with the National Trust and the Archives and FRC to decide the way forward.
Yeah. You, by virtue of the fact that you are two high-ranking members of the St. Lucia Archeological and Historical Society, you also sit on the board of the St. Lucia National Trust. Things have been somewhat hot there of late, and as high-ranking members of that entity, I just wanted your personal assessments as to the goings-on regarding what appears to be, the government's interest in having a dolphin park there, and the National Trust personnel, Mr. Tulsi et al., are not interested because they don't see it as being part of what the trust is interested in. Just your personal views, and I think maybe a lot of our viewers are probably standing by to hear what both of you have to say about that. So, there we go.
Well, hot button issues, hot potatoes. In terms of the dolphinarium, Dave, personally, that's my personal position. I do not support dolphin in captivity. If we look at what is happening, the world is going in the direction of moving away from having dolphins in captivity. Just recently, last week or week before, the French government instituted some new policies concerning dolphins and whales that are in captivity. When I think the policy makes it clear that the dolphins that they now have in captivity are the ones that they can have in captivity, and the whales too. And secondly, the government asked that the pens that those animals are being held in should be expanded to allow them some more freedom and so on. My principal reason for personally objecting to dolphins being kept in captivity is based on what I have seen in documentaries. Dolphins in the wild are such animals that when human beings find themselves in distress, in trouble at sea,
they come to
dolphins come around the human beings. They encircle the human beings to protect the human beings from the whales and the sharks and other dangerous animals in the seas.
Yeah.
And it warms my heart when those human beings actually get rescued, to see the dolphins jump up in the air and they clap with their fins and they dance. So I'm saying these dolphins, from that perspective, they are of more value to us humans when they are in the wild than when they are kept in a pen.
I would add in captivity.
In captivity. And secondly, I have seen many documentaries, have read of many reports, heard of many reports where those animals in captivity, after many years interacting with the trainers, the people who work with them in those pens, they actually turn around and kill some of those trainers. They go behind the barricades and pull them in the waters and kill them. So it cannot, if it is a good thing for the dolphins, why would after so many years would they turn against the trainers and even kill them?
Wow.
Right? So that is my personal take on it. In terms of a dolphinarium on Pigeon Island, I think the value of Pigeon Island to me, and I think to many St. Lucians, is in Pigeon Island being what it is as it is. I would have preferred that Pigeon Island had no military relics, none of these old buildings. These have been there for hundreds of years. There is nothing we could have done about them. They were put there from the colonial days by the British, maybe the French, and so on. But these form part of our heritage, and therefore we have to preserve those things. But in terms of putting any new structure there, to me it's really going to devalue Pigeon Island.
So you think it's at variance with
it is at variance,
the historical
exactly,
and preservation,
exactly,
pristine sort of nature of Pigeon Island.
Exactly.
It's one is one.
It's
One
a
can be
mixed fit.
described as
It's a mixed fit.
it's
yes.
a mixed.
And I remember
It's a misfit.
It's a misfit.
yes.
Yeah.
When I think of Pigeon Island, I cannot resist that thought taking me back to Cabrit's in Dominica. Right? It's a piece of land that is similar to Pigeon Island now that it is connected to the mainland. Pigeon Island is connected to the mainland. And you go to Cabrit's, you see the old military barracks and so on there. And
that
is being preserved.
Yeah.
It's been used. You know, if people go to Dominica, they go on camps, they actually stay there and so on.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, fine, that is there, you preserve it, you keep it, it's part of our history. But I can't imagine Dominicans thinking of putting a dolphinarium on Cabrit's because they understand the value.
What's your take?
Well, the world is moving on, and there's something called ideological necrophilia, that is being in love with old ideas. And I think dolphinarium is an old idea. It's passé in my mind, and it's something that's of the past, and the whole world is moving on. Like people in Southeast Asia used to eat dogs and cats. They've just had a ban on that in some parts of Southeast Asia. Grenada's MP has just spoken about the value of the environment versus jobs, and he says you must have both, which we know you must have, but he said not at the expense of the environment. Okay. And that's Dr. Mitchell speaking. Okay. St. Vincent has just banned the whale hacking. Dr. Gonzalez down there. And India has just banned it. Okay. Mexico has just banned it. Yeah.
Are you saying that you're against the dolphin park in totality, or if say the government said, okay, we're going to look at a different location, would you be thinking differently?
My preference would not to have dolphins in captivity.
And you feel the same way?
Yeah.
Yes, I feel the same way.
Okay.
However, I don't think I individually has the power to stop the establishment of a dolphinarium elsewhere.
Yeah.
Even if I would not like to see it take place on Pigeon Island for the reasons that I have explained.
But I also think Pigeon Island is sacred.
Let me just tell viewers, I know that some of you may want to be part of this interesting discourse, so you're quite free to give us a call. We are going to put the telephone numbers on the screen and give you the opportunity to be part of this interesting dialogue. So, how do you view what's going on? What is obviously the various groups, the various entities airing their views. I really would love to have seen them behind closed doors coming, and trying to handle this matter amicably, but clearly this is not the case. We hear representatives of the government speaking out, we hear Mr. Tulsi speaking out, we hear Dr. Chase speaking out, and sometimes it just appears to be a two-way métier. And I think, frankly, St. Lucians are getting a little fed up of this whole thing. That's my personal view. I just wish these people will go behind closed doors and settle it once and for all. Are we going to do it, or are we not going to do it? And move on. But this back and forth, every week somebody has to make a statement. I think from what I'm hearing on the ground, a lot of people are just tired of it.
I think... I've said it before and I'll use it again. When two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. And when two elephants make love, it is still the grass that suffers. The grass here means the people and the land, and the two elephants that fight are the political parties that have their own tribalism that's there, that does not go away. So that's the Ilela. And when investors and political parties are in bed, we still suffer, the land and the people. So what we want to do here in this discourse is to be, as my colleague usually says, is to be reasoned and reasonable. What we are asking for, and I think the solution to the halikase, is to sit down and have consultation. Truth never lies in the opposing forces, according to Tagore, but in the reconciliation of the two. You need both for movement, but you need to bring them together. The opposition is important. You need to have opposition. You need to have people asking the questions. You need to have people interrogating any development, because democracy does not stop at the ballot box.
Nor does it begin there.
Nor does it begin there. We need to have wide consultation, broad consultation. It is important for a democracy. And what we need to do is, nobody has all the answers. The trust does not have all the answers. ANH doesn't have all the answers. The opposition does not have all the answers. The experts don't have all the answers. Nor does any government. So we need to talk. We need to sit down as grown men and women and have a conversation with ourselves about our beautiful country and where we're going with it. I'm going to give you an experience very quickly. Oh, you want to talk to me?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes. I believe that consultation, conversation is the best way. And if I were the Prime Minister, from the very beginning, I would have approached the National Trust, I would have approached the A&H as I would have done other organizations, and let them know exactly what proposals we have and get the input. Get them to look at the proposals, the various aspects, and make suggestions. I believe this is very good governance when you get various persons, various entities in society to actually contribute, take part in the decision-making processes. Then people actually take ownership, part ownership of the decision. And at the end of the day, everybody feels responsible if things go wrong. And equally, everybody enjoys themselves, take pride in the decision when things go well. And I think if that approach had been taken, then all the rhetoric, all the lie that you find everywhere, all of these things would have been avoided. Yes. So again, as one who is deep into sustainability, in sustainable development, one of the key aspects of sustainable development is the process of reconciliation, the process of talking, the process of exchanging, the process of sharing.
Has the St. Lucia Archeological and Historical Society made a statement about this matter?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
I mean, we have articulated our support for the restoration of the subvention of the National Trust in another interview, where we believe that the National Trust really have done a lot of work. They've done a lot of research. They need the money.
And they have a lot more to do.
And they have a lot more to do. And
You say they need the money?
Yes, they do. Because the trust is a very important institution.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. No one is doubting
and if
that.
you have been given a task and you've done well, it should not be you've been punished for doing well. That's how I see it. The trust has done pretty well and I'm saying the trust could do better and more. I agree with that. But you don't punish or take away when somebody is doing well. You encourage them.
So why would you use the word punish?
Because
are you suggesting then that they're being punished because they do not see eye to eye with the government, and the Prime Minister says something very different?
I think the way it was done, I think if because people, they've taken off this cut the trust subvention before, not in total, but they have reduced it. But I think in this dispensation,
so perhaps you should have said, it is appearing that
it's a perception.
Right.
It's a perception.
Right.
But you see, so the thing is, Dave and St. Lucia, we live in a modern era where things have to be done by consensus. Not everything, because you give the Prime Minister a mandate to govern, and he must govern. But when you have some decisions like a big project like the Dolphin Park or the DSH, I know we want to head into that, that has to be discussed. They shouldn't be in such haste, because I have had an experience, a bird enter my house, and I want to save it, and in the process I kill it,
Oh, it's happened to me. It happens to me sometimes, and the thing is so small,
yes,
and it's trapped inside, and it keeps knocking against the window, and it's agonizing just watching what's taking place. And so you try to take a broom and you try to save it,
and then you kill it.
In the process it dies.
As soon as you don't even touch it, it's just of the constant, it gets overexcited and dies. So my point here, I'm trying to say, sometimes when you're trying to do something well or something good, you may be destroying it if you don't have broad-based consultation and discussion with researchers, people who have done a lot of research. We must put a lot of value on research. People who have done a lot of work in that field, do not poo-poo research and the work of people who have given their lives in this regard. So we need to come together. Investors, educators, even the local people, they have indigenous knowledge that we need to tap into when we have the development. Because our goal is sustainable development for us and for the succeeding generation, to live it in as good a condition as we inherited it, or even better.
Okay, let's take our second and final break, and when we come back, we will zero in on DSH and all of what's going on, the speculation about Maria Island, the Causeway, Sandy Beach, and we'll also discuss the politics of it, and the lines are open. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
The Ministry of Health will be undertaking an island-wide survey from April 24th to verify and document St. Lucia's success in eliminating schistosomiasis, otherwise known as bilharzia, a chronic disease caused by parasitic worms which live in certain freshwater snails. This survey targets primary school students within the age group of 8 to 11 years. It is very simple. The survey will obtain a urine sample from students, a few drops of blood through a finger prick, and administering a short questionnaire. All tests will be undertaken by a trained team from the Ministry of Health under the supervision of a registered nurse. Now remember, this is only a survey. St. Lucia currently has no issues with schistosomiasis or bilharzia. However, we need the support of communities, teachers, parents, and their students. Partner with the Ministry of Health and support the survey from April 24th. And help protect the health of this generation and future generations. A message brought to you by the Ministry of Health in partnership with the Ministry of Education and the Pan American Health Organization.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the official opening of the Calypso Season 2017. TOT Soca Village in collaboration with CMC present Kaiso Legacy Grand Opening Night, Wednesday, May 31st at the NCC, 8 p.m. on time. A total package promised. Young, new, seasoned performers, all genres of Calypso, Kaiso, Groovy, Soca. Kaiso Legacy, heavy hitters on stage, Invader, Morgie, Black Pearl, Lil Nick, Achiever, Weatherman, Her Black, Wally, and more. Kaiso Legacy, TOT Soca Village Grand Opening Night, Wednesday, May 31st at the NCC. Admission $20. A season of surprises. Kaiso Legacy. Kaiso.
Hello there, welcome back. I'm David Samuels, Mr. Chairman, and I'm here with two members of the Archeological and Historical Society. First, it's Vice President and Mr. Francis Pappin, and its Archeological Secretary, Mr. Laurent Jomo Jean-Pierre. The lines are open. It gives you an opportunity to, give us your spin, give us your take on some of the major concerns, the major discourse taking place in the country these days, and we want to zero in on DSH, and I'm going to put that question to my two interviewees. The telephone numbers 451-9349, 453-1730. Let's go straight to VA4. VA4, thank you for calling VA4. Nice to have you. Good evening.
Yes, I have been listening for your program every night, but actually I'm not hearing nobody calling, so I did a call.
Mute your TV. Turn your TV down because there is some feedback. We would like to hear you. We want you to use the phone. Mute your TV.
Okay.
Right, that's much better.
It's much better now?
Yes, oh yes, much better. Go right ahead.
Okay, yeah, I find it on the dolphin thing. I think it's a good idea. just for St. Lucian a little bit to realize something better. Because they haven't seen, some children maybe they haven't even seen a dolphin.
And any thoughts about DSH and the horse racing
Oh,
track?
DSA, that's a wonderful thing. I think it's the best thing that ever happened to St. Lucia.
So are you calling from VA4?
Yeah, I'm calling from Beaufort.
What part of VA4 are you calling from? There is so. Could you give me a sense? I want to rely on what you think is going on. What are you hearing? What are people saying to you in your daily discourse and communicating with various people? What are you hearing on the ground? Would you say that more people are for or against?
Well, yes, sir. I can explain a lot for you because I'm on the people every day.
Go right ahead.
Uh-huh. Well, there is two parties. The Labour Party is against it, but the other party is for it, you know?
Yeah, but that's not what I'm asking.
Yeah, but some of the people are complaining. They are saying they have their pigs, they have their this, that. They don't want to change the place as it is. It's supposed to stay as it is. They cannot go by the beach again. You know, all kind of thing they are saying, you know. And some are saying it's a good idea because that will bring work in the place and it will bring economy and all kind of thing going on.
But in your opinion, who would you say has the majority support? The side for or the side against? In your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, I want it to happen.
That's a nice one.
That's a
Thank
good
you.
one.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That was brilliant.
That's nice. That's a nice one. And that segue into DSH. So we hear a lot about the DSH, this massive investment that is being proposed for the south of the island. And the Prime Minister has often said that it's a framework agreement, and the green light has been given for the horse racing track. Gentlemen, your views about that part of the DSH project?
I can put myself in the Prime Minister's situation, and I can imagine the weight that is bearing down on him, given the responsibilities that come with being Prime Minister.
Yeah.
It is not an easy task. It is not an easy responsibility. I, as an economist, as a public policy and administration person, as a political scientist, and so on, I understand the situation that we are in St. Lucia, in terms of our economy, the state of our health, the state of our education, and so on. And it's been a while since I've been very concerned about deterioration in this country in various aspects of our lives.
Social.
Yes, social, etc.
Economical.
Yes, yes, yes. And I understand the pressures that the Prime Minister is under to really do something to improve all of those situations. However, I want to caution that we should be very careful in doing things so that in the end we do not end up worsening our situation as opposed to making them better. I know that we have to undertake various projects in order to develop our society, develop our economy, so that we can make money to improve ourselves socially, but at the same time we need to protect our environment. I do not have information about the framework of agreement, so therefore I cannot talk much about it. I do not have a copy. As far as I know, the government has not made that available. But what I will say at this point in time is I want whatever we do to be sustainable. And again, I would go back to a point that I made earlier. There is need for consultation with various entities so that at the end of the day, it would be a collective responsibility. And that would also serve to lessen the flames that are all around the country in terms of those.
I want to ask a question, Jomo. It is very clear that this whole issue has been politicized. Is there any way that it could not have been politicized? Because we're talking about economic development, and he spoke about sustainability and all that. We understand all that. But clearly, from what our caller said, it is very clear that there are two camps. And it does appear, although the St. Lucia Labour Party has made it very, very clear that they are not against development. It's just there are certain aspects of that particular development that is of concern to them, and they would like to see things go back to the drawing board. But having said that, and you didn't have to hear me say it, you heard a caller. There she is, she's right there in Deriso, and she's hearing both sides. How damaging, in your view, is that?
I've said it before. When the political parties fight, we suffer. We lose reason. And everybody is trying to save face, and it's a battle of the parties. And we are caught in the middle. We have no time to be reasonable and reason and sit down. All of these political parties have made mistakes in the past. All of them, everyone. In fact, we have what we developed in the 70s, a systems plan of parks and protected areas. People give their life work to this, put places aside that should have been protected and legislated, and the powers that be ignore it, like they're ignoring the constitutional change. Same modus operandi. And so the problem is we don't want to develop that country sustainably. We want to develop it along political lines. That is the problem. Every political party wants to score points. And it's time we sit down as grown men and women and decide country is first. If the Labour Party has questions, absolutely entertain the questions. Let's sit down and talk in a responsible way. I would advise the Labour Party, if I were to advise them, the UWP has a framework agreement, or what you call a artistic rendering of the project. Whatever your objections are, get your technocrats and have another model and say, we think that is good, that is good, that is good. But we have questions around these areas. The size of the project, for example. We believe in this Viewfort is a flat land, and it's our the largest area of flat land we have on the island. Maybe the project we need to massage it and mold it into the space that we have to leave land for the future generation. Do not tie all of that land with one man at this time, and perhaps the 99-year lease is too much. Let us get back to the drawing board and let us negotiate and let us talk. That is how civil society behaves. People sit down and do what's best for the country. You give and take, ebb and flow. That is what a civil society does. We don't scream at each other all over the place. It's angry and people lose. An old man told me, anytime you get angry, you lose your mind. You're semi-mad. You lose your reasoning power. And we need to reason and bring in the science, the free house. As you say, reason and reasonable and research. We must not ignore research in all of it. We as a people have to make sure whatever that is but the dear personally, if the dear from what I'm hearing, the rendering about not reaching the island, that's somebody's concept, and it's a concept as far as I'm concerned. But now we have to discuss the concept, give us information so that we could sit down. We need information. We cannot do things we cannot reason if we don't have the information. And the people who have the information must give us the information so we could make an informed decision as a country. That is my perspective on this thing. We cannot just be working in silos. We need to come together and work as a country. The National Trust or the opposition should not be seen as barriers to development or to the government. It should not be. We should be conduits or bridges to sustainable development. But we all know tut muni agenda you.
Well, that's
the problem. And I want to be very frank here tonight.
Yeah.
The South belongs politically to the Labour Party in time past. Labrie, from where I came from, see Chair Labour. Viewfort has most of the time has been Labour. And of course, Moses seat. Let's look at the political landscape. Let's get political now in the political landscape.
Or you're doing analysis?
I'm doing an analysis.
Okay.
An analysis. Thank you for the correction. It's a political analysis. That has been the stronghold of the Labour Party for a long time. You win these free seats, all you have to do is to try and get a few other seats in the Castries Basin, and you're in with the bacon. The UWP realized that. And perhaps what should have been done in the South, like the hospital, a proper hospital there in the past 5 years, was not done. And they see an opening. If you are a politician and you're savvy, you're going in there and you're building a hospital, Dave. Because you want to get a wedge in, in that area to try and win over and to take over the stronghold. So you enter into the mouth of the dragon to take over the stronghold of the dragon. So all of that is at play.
To the politics of it.
Oh, yes.
And do you think civil society recognizes, most people recognize that? Or you think it is so so sugar-coated that
diplomatic niceties.
You know, some people aren't aware. What are your views on that? Do you share his view, though?
I think...
now, the Lucia Labour Party has really been in control of the South for goodness knows how many years.
And not that the Labour
Years
Party
and
don't
years
have
and years.
concerns. I'm not saying that.
No, we're not saying that
yes,
either.
yes,
because we know they do have some concerns, and I was very careful to say that they do have some concerns. But we're discussing now the politics
We
of
are
it.
analyzing.
And so
I want to hear from the distinguished doctor there who did political economics on this matter.
Well, this is a
tricky one.
No. It is a classic case of political economy. Mm-hmm. Many people, when they look at economics, sometimes they tend to divorce it or separate it from the politics, and vice versa. But this is a case that is smack in the middle of the intersection of economics and politics, where one impacts the other. I have been looking at it, putting my hat as a political scientist on one hand, putting my hat as an economist on the other hand, and I quite understand. Using my knowledge of both disciplines, I understand.
Hold that thought. Let's go to Denry. We want to give our caller an opportunity to chip in. Hi, Denry. Thank you so much for calling. We do appreciate it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I've been listening to you over a couple of a long time since you're on the program.
Okay.
But one question I have for you: have you ever seen or heard any discussion on any project Labour Party has undertaken in this country. Have we ever had this level of discussion on any project?
Have we ever had a discussion on any project
That the Labour Party has undertaken in this country? The level of discourse we are having now, the topic, the discussion.
to answer this fairly? No.
Okay.
No, I
So
don't
what
think
would you
so.
say now? What would you say now? Is a different dispensation, a different, it's an opening. How you call it again? It's a different transparency. Is it that? Why so many people are talking now? I want to know.
Because it's a different dispensation, young man.
I agree. No, I'm not that young. I'm about your age. I want to know because I'm old enough to know.
Well,
I have never witnessed any level of discussion on any project that has been taken on that. Well, which is a good thing.
Can I give a feedback?
Well, hang on.
Yeah,
Yes,
sorry.
you're free to.
Okay, sorry.
But I want to ask you this. But what's happening there, is it necessarily a bad thing or a good thing?
I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
But is it a good thing?
It is a good thing. Why is it we did not have it before?
But I'm waiting
the
for
point
the
I am making.
but
Yes.
there's but.
The point I am making,
Yes.
before, all we used to hear, that project is being undertaken, that one is being undertaken.
That's
and no
true.
transparency.
Okay.
Is that true?
That's not quite true. They've had projects that people have even
That's his
Yeah.
interpretation.
Yes, yeah,
that
but
is his
I am
perception.
yes, but he asked, is that true?
Yeah.
So I am
Well,
responding.
Yeah.
I think they've had cries. The cries were not as loud as it is now. I might accept that, because this is 900 acres of land. So it's a big one. It's like if your house is burning.
Let him.
I'm not referring to the DSH project. That is not what I'm saying.
I knew that.
Well, right now it is about the Dolphin Park, and everybody putting the DSH project into that column. But what I'm saying is not about DSH, but the level of discussion we are having now, the political fellows who are driving that force around. Have we ever had that in the history of St. Lucia?
I don't think I can remember a period.
I'm
when
sure,
it
Mr.
has
Chairman,
been-
you're about my age, and I never heard such thing.
But I've already answered your question.
Okay.
I cannot remember that level of discourse at any time. I mean,
So we are in a new dispensation, and something new is happening to St. Lucia. I'm not against it, I mean, you are learning something from it.
and what would I ask you? What have you learned from it? What are you learning from it?
Well, the discussion is good. You have so many different people expressing their opinion of either you're for or against.
That
You
seems
understand?
that seems like a cop out to me. I want to know what you think.
What I think?
Yes, because you're very clever. You want to know what I think. You want to know what Jomo thinks. You want to
Exactly,
know what
exactly.
Pappin thinks, but you're
Yes.
not letting us know what you think.
Well, that is not the right forum for me to do that. I'm asking your opinion.
So you are humoring us.
I ask you your opinion.
Okay. Well, I've already given it.
Okay, you have never seen this type of level of discussion
No.
on any project.
No.
Okay, so that is a certain level of transparency.
Not in recent times. The only thing that I can remember that is that just prior to the independence in 1979, I don't know if you remember
Exactly. I was a young man around that time, so I can remember all the Ruru and all
the
that.
trips that Compton made with the
You're right.
opposition to England to discuss independence for St. Lucia.
I'm quite aware of it, Mr. Sharon.
So
Yeah.
that's a period perhaps that comes to mind. But
Yeah.
Plywood
apart
City.
from that,
Plywood
I don't
City.
think.
I remember.
Thank you.
The Hess.
Okay, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Fine.
The Hess project drew quite a lot
Yes,
of
of fire too.
of discussion too.
Yeah, but it was even in the House.
Yes.
It was actually discussed in the House because Mr. Hess suggested that he was not going to invest in St. Lucia unless the opposition party at the time, the St. Lucia Labour Party,
Also sign onto the agreement.
signed on.
But you see, it's a different time. Look at what's going on in Trinidad, for example. That child marriage. So a lot. The world is moving in a whole different direction.
You were
Yes,
Yes,
I was saying
yeah.
that I think Jomo hit on some points there which I have been thinking of and which I agree with. A political economy case. Here you have an administration that is putting a lot of focus on developing the South. I am very familiar with Vieux-Fort. I know Vieux-Fort has become, it's been a sleepy place, and I think Vieux-Fort could have been developed much more than it has.
No doubt about
to
that.
this point.
No doubt about that.
And here is an administration that is putting a lot of focus on developing Vieux-Fort. Personally, I would like to see Vieux-Fort get developed to the point where its status is going to be elevated from a town to a city. And the current opposition, their political base is in the South.
So there's a big threat right there.
And I can see from a political economy perspective, I can see with the ruling party making a political decision to develop Vieux-Fort economically, where the St. Lucia Labour Party is being threatened that if Vieux-Fort is developed economically, then there will be negative political ramifications for them. I can understand that. What I am saying is, I am for development, but I want it to be sustainable.
Yeah.
For example, there are certain things that we've got to be so careful. We must not run into it. I've said it before. Youth ventures, but age considers. And we need to consider this development, especially we are a small island state, 248 square miles. So any little mistake will appear big.
Yeah.
So we've got to be very cautious how we develop Vieux-Fort, especially...
Closing thoughts, guys. We got to
Okay.
run. We have only 2 minutes left. Just give me
Okay.
your closing thoughts very quickly. Jomo?
I believe I want to read something there. It says the
minutes.
entrepreneur's capacity to exploit makes sustainability possible, but it is the entrepreneur's inclination to over-exploit which makes sustainability necessary.
And how would you...
So in other words, we must have a what I call a reflective equilibrium, a balance in what we're doing. If we don't do that balance, and that is why people like the trust, the A&H, civil society is so important in the discourse to bring in that balance in the whole development for us.
Yes. We came here primarily to talk about the A&H.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that we've been able to communicate some of our vision for taking the A&H forward to the people of St. Lucia, and those who are beyond our borders, who are listening, watching. And I want to leave all of us with the message that the A&H is just one entity, but we are very open to working with other entities in order for us to achieve our objectives, because what we need to get done in St. Lucia cannot be done by any one entity.
Well said. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been very enlightening and edifying. And I want to thank you both for being here from the Archeological and Historical Society, First Vice President, Mr. Francis Pappin, and the Archeological Secretary, Laurent, Jomo, Jean-Pierre. Thank you both for being here. This program is going to be rebroadcast on Sunday at the same time, 8:30, and on Wednesday morning after the 6 a.m. news. I want to thank those of you who called, particularly the lady from Vieux-Fort, and of course our friend in Dennery. Always nice to hear from you folks. And next week we have a very interesting program, a very, very interesting guest. So we look forward to being with you next week at the same time. In the meantime, on behalf of my Archeological and Historical Society friends, this is David Samuel speaking. Thank you very much, Randall, upstairs. This meeting is adjourned.